With so many issues to discuss in the country, when you have such a guest as you have seen on the welcoming slide, you know we're in for some information. So this morning, Ibrahim Shakarau joins us this morning. He is APC Senator representing the Kano Central Senatorial Zone. He is a former Minister of Education, and he is also a two-term governor of Kano State. Thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Yeah, well, let's just begin with, what you have also, spoken about, and that's the massacre in Borno. Well, one of the major concerns a number of people have raised about that one is it's one too many.
Yeah.
And it's almost like we don't get ahead of it before it hits. What should we be doing now to ensure it doesn't happen again?
Well, thank you very much. I think the massacre, as you call it in Borno, is a very sad one, very disturbing, very disappointing, and very heart-touching. You see, it's not just the killing. You see, the brutality, the impunity. We've had several cases of killings, going into the community, shooting indiscriminately, and so on. But this time, the impunity, cutting the head, tying the hands, and bringing the head to place on the chest. I mean, it's terrible. In fact, I couldn't bear watching the various corpses as they're being shown over the social media. It's so terrible, and that shows we're getting to a very terrible situation. And the challenge of the insecurity is by the day mounting, and the nation has to address this issue of insecurity. You see, having challenges of insecurity is nothing new in any nation, but to see the effort, what is the government doing about it? We know there are a lot of challenges within the security services. The number is there, the equipping is there, the training is there, the welfare is there. All of these things need to be addressed because they are key to the issue of security, the issue of intelligence. 90% of security relies on information, intelligence gathering. That seems to be failing. There has been the allegation of no proper synergy between the various security agencies, and the story is there on the street. They are not cooperating. There are a lot of challenges, and I think with this happening now, we are concerned to the point that my brother, the governor of Borno, seemed to have given up, asking for machineries to be hired and so on. So I think
Do you think that's a good idea?
I don't think so, because there's nothing wrong in getting some assistance from outside. There's nothing wrong from probably areas that you think you need to be supported. But giving an impression that we need to rely on the hired machineries to do the security is like giving up. I think the man, to be fair to him, we all see how concerned he has been. He seemed to be throwing the hands up. Well, since we're failing, why don't we bring in? I pity him and pity all of us. I think I can see what he said is a clear display of helplessness.
No.
But really it is terrible. The impunity is terrible. And that's why 2 days ago, when this issue was placed on the floor of the two chambers of the National Assembly, people were terribly enraged. And you see the resolutions being passed all over the place.
And it is interesting you didn't mention some of those resolutions in the solutions you think should be put forward, like the sacking of the service chiefs.
Yeah, you see, the issue of this sacking of the service chiefs, it has been on for almost 2-3 years now. There is one point I think the presidency is missing, and that the public has not been brought on to it. before you get to the question of whether they are performing or not performing, there is a question of rule of law. The military is one of the several public services. It's governed by laws, by a scheme of service, as we call it. In the scheme of service, as it is in the public service all over, including the military, there are conditions on when to leave automatically. You either attain the age of 60 or put in service for 35 years, whichever comes first. They're supposed to retire. All of them. None of them has less than 35. I think the Chief of Defense Staff has put in 39 years of service. All the others, all of them, except the Chief of Defense Staff, who is 58 now, all of them are more than 60. And Chief of Air Staff has put in about 37 years. Chief of Naval Staff has put in about 41 years. So what we're saying is that even if Mr. President has found them indispensable, allow them to retire, just like any public service, as the rule specifies, and you can hire them either as Minister of Defense, Advisor on Defense, NSA, whatever. But allowing them to stay. You see, there is a difference between you are still within the service period and the president can keep you for as long as he so wishes. If you are 50 and you have put in 25 years of service, which means you have 10 more years to go, if you are Chief of Army Staff, for the next 10 years, the president is at his own pleasure to keep you on. But automatically, if you hit 60 years, you must go. If you hit 35 years of service, you must go. So this is within the service scheme of service. So as far as I'm concerned, there's rule of law. We should respect the law before you even talk of whether they are performing or not.
Is the president, from what you're saying now, is the president breaking any law?
He is definitely breaking the law. The law says if you are 60, you must go. It's so automatic. If you are 35 years of service, you must go. So, in fact, they are not staff of Mr. President. They are staff of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And there's a rule. It's just like in the civil service. If you are an ordinary civil servant and you hit 60 years, automatically you must go. If you put in 35 years of service, the president hasn't the right to extend beyond what the law says. That's his rule of law.
Isn't there anything the National Assembly can do in that regard to compel the president?
Well, you see, the process, before you use the word compelling, you see the process between the executive and the legislature, it is one government, if you like, and all the National Assembly does is advisory, all resolutions. And I think 2 days ago when Mr. President, the Senate President spoke, he spoke a mind. He said, please, he was calling on the presidency to take the National Assembly resolutions very seriously. Mm-hmm. You see, even though the resolutions are said to be advisory, there should be some level of respect. Your father can advise you, and if I'm talking to my son, I say, please give me this cup of tea. I'm saying, please do it. I'm being courteous. You see, I have the right to compel him to do it, but we haven't gotten to that. You see, there are provisions in the Constitution. If you break the law, you'll be summoned. If you don't explain, the issues of impeachments are there. But I think we don't want to get into all of that because it is disrupting the polity, it will overheat the polity, and but resolutions upon resolutions upon resolutions. I don't know why you're still keeping them. I think he has the right to decide whether they are performing or not. But let me remind you of Mr. President's statement himself. He said the service chiefs are doing their best, but their best is not good enough. As a teacher, if you are not doing good enough, it's below average.
So maybe what the president is also saying, is that maybe the challenge is not with the service chiefs. But regarding the laws, it would appear as though the president's thinking is, we're not breaking any law, because the president's spokesperson says he's not aware that the tenure of service chiefs is subject to any law or regulation that is clearly stated. they serve at the pleasure of the president.
No, that's where he's missing it. That's where he's missing it. They are serving at the pleasure of the president within their service period. There is a law. There is a law. I think he doesn't know. There is a law within the scheme of service that says if you serve for 35 years, you must go. If you attain the age of 60 years, you must go. It's a law. It's there within the scheme of service, even within the military service.
So for those who have escalated this even further, I mean, just before we came up, you listened to the Northern Elders Forum spokesperson saying, well, the president should resign. Yeah. Do you think that's a fair enough suggestion?
No, I think, you see, the failure to appear doing the right thing is what pushes people to all this level. Just like what we've just said now about our brother, the governor of Borno State. Say, look, if our system has failed, let's hire others. So it's in the same vein. If the unruly conduct and behavior of government keeps on and on and on, the tendency is, look, if you are not able to respect the rule, if you are not able to get people to listen to the views of the public you are governing, you better go. So I think the failure to respect the views of the National Assembly. Here is a collection of elected people, 469. There wasn't any dissenting voice in asking Mr. President to let these people go. And in fact, as it is being mentioned, I expect the service chiefs to respect the rule of law too, to respect the rule within the scheme of service. If it is time, what we do in the public service, immediately you hit 60 years, you put in your retirement. Or the Civil Service Commission will advise you, please, it's time up, can you submit your retirement papers? So I think not only the presidency, even the management of the military service is failing.
Okay.
Well, because they have it. They should advise them to go.
Now, you talked about the advice of the National Assembly that the president isn't heeding, but the advice is not only coming from the National Assembly.
Yeah.
As my colleague said, the advice has also come from the Northern Elders Forum, as well as the Sultan, who once, very recently said that Northern Nigeria is the worst place to live now.
Yeah.
How do you react to that one?
Well, I think it's part of the concern, being thinking aloud. You see, I'm afraid it's a statement of helplessness. The president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. The presidency controls all these things. And people, well-meaning people, are telling you, review this thing. You can't get the same result, different result by doing the same thing over and over and over again. By the time you bring in new people, we're not saying the service chiefs are not very experienced, are not well-trained, they are not doing very well, but the point is that you have stayed long enough on this thing, and the challenges are growing. Bring in new ideas. The new service chiefs, probably the president is not going to pick them from the street. He's not going to pick them from the dustbin. It's from within the same service in the ranks. But what we're saying, when you bring in new heads, new changes, the expectation is that there's going to be the new zeal, the tendency of new ideas, new strategies, and so on. But as I said earlier on, we must appreciate the fact that it's not just about the service chiefs.
But that brings me to this question.
Yeah.
The Northern Governors Forum has also had a good number of meetings about this thing, security summits, economic summits, and all of that, all pointing to the need to do a lot more in terms of security and all of that. Yeah. But the reasons for the insecurity in the north are also varied. Yeah. A number of people have talked about, security experts talk about the need to scale up improve on the inequality, talk about the poverty and unemployment and all those things. So then it would seem like unless we resolve the economic inequalities, the problem of insecurity is going to stay.
Well, I think the issue of the security challenge, I must say, it's not just limited to the north. It's a nationwide problem. The issue of unemployment is a global problem, it's a national problem. But I quite agree with you. When the insurgency started in the northeast, probably we didn't have enough intelligence monitoring to really get to the root of the whole thing. It's not just about the military might all the time. You have to get to the real cause, the root of the matter, do a lot of analysis as to what you need to do to address the issue. What we see out is just the tip of the iceberg. And the neglect was very clear, and before you knew it, Mohammed Yusuf and his group went underground and they started getting support from outside, weapons, money, and the like, and they became a serious threat. And now that the other issue up in northwestern areas of Nigeria, it started with the cattle rustling, farmer had a crisis, and it was just being seen as a normal thing and so on. Before you knew it, it's no longer rustling of cattle. They are kidnapping. They've become burglars. They break houses. It's no longer kidnapping even on the street. They go into houses to kidnap. So I think we need to address the entire issue of poverty, education, unemployment. When we had the opportunity in Kano, we involved the community in all of these things. It's not just enough for government to sit and dish out policies and programs. You need to involve the community. We created what we call the Societal Orientation Program. I think it's quite a popular program in Kano, where we involve the people to be part of the process. We sort of a council of about 50 people. I and the Emir of Kano were co-chairmen of the council. We sit almost every month. We bring in all kind of representation from different parts of the society. The youth are there, the ulamas are there, the clerics are there, the politicians are there, the business people are there. And it was a very successful program that we were able to sensitize the people. Even this so-called skill acquisition. When we collect about 1,000 youths, before you send them to apprentices and to acquire skills, we camp them during the vacation of the school. We use the school's premises. We keep them for about 4 weeks. All we do is to inject into their head, why do you need a skill? Why do you need source of income? Unless you do that, we've had instances in many states where you give them empowerment of equipment, they cross the road and sell it out, and back to square one again.
You know, you were also instrumental in the setting up of Hisbah, which is some sort of community policing.
Absolutely.
And I'm sure you've seen the trends across states, governors saying, well, we need to have more control over security such that, I mean, we are the chief security officers, not the chief logistic officers, like some have put it.
Yes.
So looking at the agitation now, what do you think? I mean, you talked about the Borno state governor feeling helpless. So what should be the way forward regarding governors having some control over security in their state?
Well, I think the idea of community policing is one of the key factors that will give us the success story about moving forward. There's no way I agree that you can achieve any success in security without involving the community, because the people living there know themselves, know the terrain. When you bring in the police, the army, they don't know the terrain, they don't have the cooperation of the community, it wouldn't work. We have seen the very good example of that. When we did the Hisbah, call it anything, it's community policing. We recruited 20 Hisbah guys in every ward. We had 484 wards in Kano. And these were volunteers, responsible people that came up to do the services. And within the first 1-2 years, we checked all the vices within the state. At the moment anything erupts in any community, it will be discovered, it will be noticed, it will be brought to the attention of the leadership of the ward, to the local government before it even gets to the state. It worked. I think sometimes, a couple of months back, when we invited the Inspector General of Police to the Senate, he was due for about 5 hours. At the end, he was the one that even pointed at me in the chamber. He said, look, former governor is sitting there. He did community policing. It worked. And I addressed the Senate. And we contributed in what is now known as the guidelines for community policing. I was involved in all of these things. And unless we really involve the community in this security issue.
But, so do you think it's okay to have, I mean, you've seen that they've trained about 10,000 constables still concerning security. So how do you think they should be deployed? Some are saying the commissioners of police should be responsible for the deployment. Some say the governors, or at least the state government, should be responsible. This is some form of dilemma.
I think both have to work together. You see, we created a law in Kano, the Hisba Board law, which was through legislation and so on. We had the police representation on the board. We had representation of the immigration, the custom, all the services, the civil defense, and so on. So you can't separate the two. I think that there was no point arguing whether it is the commissioner of police or the governor that should do that. And the issue of deployment, if the recruitment is right, as we did, recruiting from every ward within the local government, you don't have to bother yourself of deployment and so on. The Hisba we recruited for every ward, they worked within the ward. There is no point if you take a community policing officer from one local government and throw him to the other, you are back to square one. You see, it's like the deployment of the Nigerian police force to the places they are not used to. But the essence of the community policing is the people living there to monitor themselves, policing themselves. So the question of deployment does not even arise. Recruit from within the community and allow them to work within the community.
Just to be clear, I mean, just to touch on something we talked about earlier, the Northern Elders Forum calling for the president to resign. Are they speaking for the North?
Well, I don't think that could be totally right. It's a group. The Northern Elders Forum is just one of such several groups. You have the Arewa Consultative Forum, you have the Samuel Bello Memorial Foundation, which I'm the Secretary General. You have several other groups. You have the Youth This, Youth That. You have the Gamji group. So the Elders Forum, as of right, they are free to express their own views. But I think it is not going to be totally right to say that they are talking on behalf of the entire North. They are a very relevant group of the society in the North. Nobody can deny that. Okay. So they are expressing their views. So I wouldn't say they are speaking for all, but they're speaking the minds of a cross-section of Nigerians. Some other groups may disagree with them from the same North. Okay. So Elders Forum is just one of several of such groups, and they are free to express their views. Don't forget, it's a voluntary organization. So people can get together and express their views.
There are so many issues to raise with you, but we need to take a break now.
Thank you.
When we come back, we take on. Distinguished Senator, there's still talking about the aspect of, the president breaking the law. Perhaps there's a bit of, there's something you need to clear for us, and maybe something that the Senate also has to work on. Because if you look at the Armed Forces Act, Section 31 says an enlisted person whose term of regular service expires during a state of war, insurrection, hostilities, or public emergency may be retained in the armed forces and his service prolonged for such further period as a respective competent service authority with the approval of the Chief of Defense Staff and the Minister may direct.
You said service authority. That's what I'm saying. You see, it's not the prerogative of Mr. President alone. There is a scheme of service governed. I'm sure within the military they have the procedure, the process that will assess the desirability of prolonging the service period. So it's not applicable only to the service chiefs. It's something that is globally applicable to the service, but there is a procedure within the scheme of service. To determine whether it is required now, as you said, in the time of war, in time of crisis, within the services. And all we hear from the presidency is it is the prerogative of Mr. President to decide. What I'm saying, it is wrong. It's not the president. It is the service itself. There is a process. They are not Mr. President's staff. Of course, he's commander-in-chief, but that doesn't mean they are his staff. They are staff of the Federal Republic of Nigeria within the scheme of service of the military. That's what we're saying. Okay. So the process has been abused.
You know, the military, especially the army,
Yeah.
has been in the news lately. Especially for young people, they remember the NSAS protests and what happened at Lekki. But this wasn't just a Lagos thing. This was a national thing. We saw protests across the nation. And it was some sort of wake-up call for Nigeria, Nigerians, the government, the National Assembly also weighed in. But looking at that protest and how we have responded to it, especially the agitations of young people, would you say that we handled it well?
Well, I think handling it well or not is not the issue. You see, many people have said in the past that unless we face it, we are sitting on gunpowder. And as we say in education, that you either keep them busy or they keep you busy. If you don't keep the youth busy, they will definitely keep you busy. And see the time we've wasted, the resources that have been damaged, the properties and so on, is because we've failed to really keep them busy. So I think...
What should we do to keep them busy?
Well, what we need to do to keep them busy is really to initiate, both at state, federal, local government, to initiate a process of engaging the youth. I know the number is so enormous. Right now, actually, I am working on a proposed bill. It's still at the primary stage, to come up with a 2-year compulsory skill acquisition from the age of 18, even after graduating. You see, the NYSC thing that we've had right from 72, of course, it's a very laudable program, it's still on, but I think it's not just coming to do the national service. This time around, we need to review it and probably make it a compulsory 2-year skill acquisition. You see, government employment is no longer there. The ministries are not expanding, the same number of ministries, the same number of departments, and so on. So if all the millions of the youth being produced in the system waiting for government employment, it is simply not there. But the problem is you send them to school, they come out without any skill. So my idea is that we need to come up with a process that will compel every 18-year-old and above, even after graduating, before you get employed, whether in public service or private service, you must take some skill. Okay. So that you'll be able to at least live on such a skill without waiting for anybody to employ you.
Another angle that a number of people have also looked at, talking about new ideas now, is in the political sphere. Most of the people in politics, a good number of people are not particularly... many young youths are not there, and they form the core of the voters. Yeah. So what would you recommend as a system of integrating the younger generation into politics? Because all of the problems and solutions start at the policy level. So if we have young people in politics, some believe that it would probably be a good idea. What's your take? How do you think we should be reintegrating?
Well, I think, you see, involving them in all the process of governance, political parties, government at all levels, I buy the idea of the law that says not too young to run. I agree, involving people to, I mean, the young ones, giving them the opportunities to participate. I very much agree with that. When I was in government, I mean, as a governor, we involved the youth in virtually all of our activities. We made sure the youth are very well represented, and we get their ideas. I established Youth Development Directorate. And we gave them all the support, we gave them all they needed to ensure that the youth are embraced, and we incorporated the skill acquisition aspect to make sure we allow them to participate in decision-making process. So this is how we it's a relay button, you see. You can't cut the chain. The youth have to come on board, involving them in all the political activities and running of the parties, involving them in running of governments at all levels. That probably will increase the youth participation to get away from the usual thing that people are being recycled all over the place.
But the challenge a number of people have also raised is that the youths don't have the kind of money that some people think is needed to get into politics.
No. I think I will be the last to agree with that. I didn't have the money, and we mobilized. I retired voluntarily from service in the year 2000 and end of 2001. By 2003, I think I may sound a little bit immodest if I say that I didn't even have a house of my own. I could not boast of 100,000 naira when I decided to go into partisan politics. Within 1 year after my retirement, I became the governor. We mobilized, we supported, and a lot of them were youth, my former students, my colleagues in the service. You see, I was dragging my feet, going by the same argument, that I didn't have the money to go into this business of governance. The late Namasanin Kanome, Tamasule, called me and he said, look, Pamsa, because I retired as a permanent secretary. So why are you dragging your feet? People are asking you to come and serve. I said, sir, I haven't the kind of money. Going in for governorship, even if I'm contesting for councillor in Nigeria today, you're talking of money. He said, shut up. If you have people, you have wealth, go and answer them. That was what broke the camel's back. I went, set up a small committee. I didn't have enough money to even tour all the 44 local governments in Kano. But we spoke out, we sold out our own integrity. I didn't have money to give up. I left a borrowed house to the government house. So I agree money is relevant in all that you do, but I want to disabuse the minds of the youth that they haven't the money. Build on your integrity, sell out your integrity, let the youth identify who is capable, who is competent, and sell him out. It's not about the political party. The youth said, go into any party of your choice. They'll be there.
I think this will be quite instructive because we're building up to 2023.
Exactly.
I know you've aspired to be president one time.
I was a candidate in 2011.
Exactly. And the question now will be, do you think, I mean, this whole 2023 permutation and the whole jostling, some people call you the mathematical politician, by the way. So what do you think is the easy way around this 2023 question? Do you think a young person should be the one leading the charge of Nigeria, especially because of what we have seen with the NSAS?
No, I think the question of a young person per se is not the issue. We should be going for reliably competent people. We have to have, look at the antecedents of all those who aspire to come and lead us. What were they? What were their performances? What are their records? You see, it's not just about the platform of the party, but who are you? Who is it? In fact, my principle is that it's not a question of where you are coming from, but who is it? Rather than talking of are you from west, east, south, who is it? What do you have behind you?
So you don't believe in zoning to the southeast after what we have seen?
No, I don't call it zoning. I would rather prefer some balancing. There has to be some sense of belonging. You see, there are some, what I call constitution of common sense. For example, the Constitution of Nigeria and all the constitution of the political parties didn't say if I'm a presidential candidate from the north, my running mate has to come from the south. It's not written. But if today I'm a presidential candidate from Kano and I tell you my running mate is from Bauchi, you will say I'm crazy. But it's not written. So there is the common sense expectations of balancing, giving everybody a sense of belonging, some sense of fairness, That's what I work for.
So would you then, what would your opinion be then, using that constitution of common sense, you call it
constitution
now?
of common sense, that's what I said. Yes.
You know, there's also that talk in the public space about the Southeast presidency, you know, in the scheme of things. What's your take on that?
Southeast?
Southeast presidency.
Well, I think I don't want to be too simplistic, really, to allocate. I don't believe in just allocating.
No, when you talked about balance.
Balancing. This balancing is giving some fair sense. For example, the presidency has just been from the north for 8 years. Only common sense tells you that we should look the other side, southern part of Nigeria. If you refuse to recognize the north and the south, this is elementary geography, elementary history. We still have to recognize this balancing to work together. See, in the process of identifying credible candidate that is fit, we must also apply this constitution of common sense, of this allowing fair distribution in leadership. Okay. You see, perception is something that you have to carry along. If you continue to dominate on one particular side, the perception is that, well, what about me? What about, even if it is one person in the community that raises his finger and says, look, listen to me. He needs to be listened to.
So clearly you're not running for president again in 2020.
I don't know about that.
You talked about the constitution of common sense. I mean, one will only think that applies.
I don't know about that. We haven't gotten there yet. I think my concern...
I think politicians actually, I mean, for Nigerians, maybe not, but for politicians or someone like you, you've probably gone way beyond that. So are you saying you've really not considered that?
No. You see, I've told you a little bit of where I came from in 2003, you know, out of agitation of the people and so on. You see, my concern, honestly, is not me. It's about who leads us to the success story. Who leads us to address the aspirations of Nigeria, regardless of what the political parties.
But is this something you would give a thought to?
I'm already giving it some thought.
Good.
I'm in the arena, I mean, in the political arena, I'm a partisan politician.
Just
many talks are going on. We are part of all these discussions in the process. You see, the selection of the right man will not have to begin at the last hour. It's part of the discussion now, sharing ideas, identifying the factors that will be guiding you to identify the right person, the right fellow, whether it's from this part of the country, the other part of the country. It is in the process of all these calculations, you zeroed down into where and who. You see, there are two ways to do it. You either identify the personalities and go to the regional location, or you decide on the regional location and then use that platform to identify the personalities. Either way.
I can see the mathematical you coming out, right?
Of course, I'm a mathematics teacher,
You know, but still talking about, you raised something about leadership the other time, and I think it is crucial.
It is.
You have also served as Minister of Education, so the ASU FG imbroglio is something that must have given you some concern as well.
Very serious concern.
There was that agreement in 2009, but it was after that you were, you know, Minister of Education. What stalled the execution of the federal government's part of?
Well, I think, to my mind, the handling of the crisis, I must say, I'm not satisfied. It is there on record, you see, if I may say it at the risk of sounding immodest, when I was appointed in June 2014, by the time I came on board, I met an 11-month crisis strike by the polytechnics and colleges of education. Within my first 1 week in office, this crisis was over. And it wasn't a big deal. I invited the leadership. We sat down. We started talking. They rolled out all these outstanding issues and so on. And I agree with them, rightly so. None of the issues they were arguing was totally out of place. I accept it. That's part of the problem. You see, when people are in office, in government, When there is demand from the labor, you abuse them. You say, this is outrageous, this is wrong. Nobody is saying he has no food in his house. The crisis is about the institution. Sit and identify them. We agreed. My 2 days in office, I called the leadership of the union. We agreed. I made them to understand that we will be going to do the process of solving the problem. But let teaching and learning continue in the classroom while we're talking. And we agreed. And I was able to talk to Mr. President. He held their salary, that no work, no pay. I said, Mr. President, this is not right. We've had several no work, no pay, and you end up paying and without any problem.
Interesting.
We're able to restore it back. They went back to classroom, and we solved a number of the problems. We were meeting with the ASU leadership almost on a monthly basis. This interaction of understanding and agreeing that the way forward, as far as I'm concerned, probably that was what was missing. If everybody said, government said, because I'm government, I'm in charge, I won't listen to you, you're asking for 10 naira, I have no 10 naira, I can't give you no proper explanation. But if you're asking for 10, I don't have 10 naira. Let's sit down and agree that, yes, transparency is part of the problem. You're asking for 10, and I'm telling you I can only afford 5. But your own findings discover that I have 20.
So that just breaks down trust in the whole process.
That's largely
So
part
you're
of the
suggesting
problem.
that students will actually go back while the negotiations continue.
Continue. I support.
I remember that you chaired that implementation committee.
Exactly.
At the outcome of the needs assessment.
Exactly.
So 1.3
I was
naira,
the chairman.
and then I think 220 billion naira was
Yes,
released at that point.
absolutely.
It was meant to be over 5 years.
Yes.
How come? Because if we had done this over 5 years,
Yes.
we won't be talking about the need
Exactly.
to build the university. So what exactly went
And
wrong?
I think somehow along the line there was some break in the process. I was meeting with them almost every month, and we were monitoring the releases. And I was hammering on the presidency, talking to the Ministry of Finance, what do you call her, the woman in the World Trade Center now.
Oh, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala.
Okonjo-Iweala. And we brokered, there was some understanding. And the leadership of ASU was happy. We were monitoring. Every month we sit down, we get the account, we get the details, we get the central bank to tell us what had come in, what releases were given, what is Ted Fund doing, and so on. So this built up the confidence. And I'm sure that was probably that was not going on. So ASU felt nobody cared, they were not taken along. So this level of transparency of the money is being allocated to do the special intervention, carry them along. It's not just it's not a personal thing. The government should carry the union along and be transparent on the table. We are meeting almost every month, and there was peace.
So what would you recommend now? I mean, so far, this is what we have. The federal government has inaugurated another negotiation team with ASU and others to aggregate the agreements of 2009. What should happen so that we do not have this kind of prolonged strike again by ASU?
Well, I think, as I said, the solution is for the two to be clear. Another thing that I discovered during my experience as the minister is that when you ask the Ministry of Labor, of course they are in charge of labor, but basically these are education matters. There's no way you separate the education ministry in the process. If you ask labor to go and discuss, all the labor staff, the minister and the staff, the negotiating, they may be experts in negotiations, but they have to understand the issue. If it is about doctors and nurses, you must carry the understanding of the Minister of Health.
So you think that is missing?
That is missing from my understanding.
Okay.
That is missing.
Also many issues to raise, but then we are so short on time. We have to thank you very much for your time this morning. Senator Ibrahim Shakarau is representing Kano Central Senatorial Zone on the platform of the APC. He's a former Minister of Education and two-term governor of Kano State. Thank you so much.
And one-time presidential candidate.
And maybe future president.
Well, I don't know about that.
All right, we're back in a moment.
Thank you.
Stay with us.
Thank you.